Hello and welcome to this revision session on retrieval questions for English language papers 1 and 2. Obviously you're going to be given some text in paper 1. We're looking just at fiction text, and paper 2 you'll be given 2 non-fiction texts. This is what they will look like. This is a standard sort of looking text. They're usually about a side of A4, sometimes slightly longer, sometimes slightly shorter, but approximately a side of A4. Now, there's always going to be a section at the beginning in italics, if you can have a look just there, that gives you a bit more of information about the text. Now, that doesn't count as part of the text. So when you look at certain line numbers, it isn't included there. It just gives you a little bit of information about the background of the text. You will, however, have line numbers down the side in multiples of 5, which will help you find the sections that you're looking for. And there may be a glossary of some terms that have been used, some difficult bits of vocabulary that will be included at the end of the text. Now, what will the questions look like? They are slightly different depending on whether you're looking at paper 1, which is a fiction, or paper 2, non-fiction. So let's begin with paper 1. Question 1. Very, very typical in terms of style. So you'll have likely come across this before with your teacher in class, and it will go something along the lines of from lines 4 to 7, etc. Identify one, and it'll ask you to look for one particular aspect of the text, and that is with 1 mark. Question 2. Very much the same idea, but it will ask you to find 2 examples. So it'll say something along the lines of from lines 1 to 10, find 2 examples of. Paper 2, very, very similar in many respects, but also slightly different. Now, the top box there, questions 1 and 2, are on text 1, the first non-fiction text, very much along the lines of what we've looked at just a moment ago. So from lines 4 to 7, identify 2, and it'll be worth 2 marks. Question 2, slightly different. It might say something along the lines of give one example from lines 9 to 17 of how the writer uses language to show. So that's a slightly different one, so we'll have a look at that in a moment, but that's worth 2 marks. There are 4 marks available for the retrieval questions about text 1, and then we've got 2 further retrieval questions which are about text 2. Again, very typical in terms of style, so you'll very much get the same wording of questions from lines 20 to 26, identify one aspect of something and give one example from lines 30 to 42 of how the writer uses language to show. Okay, so they're very sort of standard questions for both paper 1 and 2, but they do vary slightly in terms of what they're asking. So some top tips in terms of how we tackle those. First of all, make sure that you read the full text before attempting the questions, the retrieval questions. It's always worthwhile highlighting any keywords or phrases in the question to make sure that you know exactly what it is that you're looking for. Whilst it's a basic skill, it's also one that's easy to mix up or get wrong. So make sure you do exactly as the question is asking you to do. I would advise you to mark up the lines of the text where you've been asked to look. So if it says from lines 5 to 10, mark that up on the side of your exam paper so you know exactly where to look, because if you give an answer from elsewhere in the text, you won't achieve any marks for it. Now, for your answers for these questions, you can copy quotations directly from the text. That's often the easiest, or you can paraphrase, which means putting it into your own words. Don't use any more space than has been provided in the exam paper, because you shouldn't be writing more than suggested by that space that's been allocated. In other words, you're going to be wasting time doing so, and you may not be awarded the mark if you copy too much out. So make sure you do exactly as the question asks you to do, and don't overthink it. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples of questions. What I've done is I've taken the chunks of the text, I've marked up the text, if you will, for you ready. I know sometimes it can be difficult to have a look at a text without the kind of the rest of the extract to give it a bit of meaning, but this will just give you the idea of what it is that you're looking for. Now, this is from a text called The Telltale Heart. You may well have looked at this in a lesson perhaps. And so question 1 says, this is from our fiction paper, from lines 1 to 5, identify the phrase which explains why there is no blood on the floor. So I'll be marking up lines 1 to 5 on my exam paper, and there are lines 1 to 5 just there. So if you'd like to have a go at this as a question, pause the video now, have a quick read through, and decide which phrase explains why there is no blood on the floor. Okay, here are three different candidates and their contributions to that question. I think it's quite useful to see which ones do and don't get the mark. So let's have a quick look at candidate A. Candidate A put, "A tub had caught it all." Now, the exam marker's comment and mark is that the exact answer has been given. So if you got that one right, then great, that gets the full mark. Candidate B puts, "A tub had caught it all, ha ha." Now, the candidate has achieved the mark as the exact wording is clear, although an additional bit has been added. So in other words, they didn't need to put the ha-ha bit on, even though that's from the text. Candidate C has put, "I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught it all." Now, this one didn't get awarded any marks, and you might wonder why, because the phrase is there. It's because, although the correct phrase has been given, there are two phrases, and the question says identify the phrase. The particular phrase has not been identified there. So be careful that you do exactly as the question wants you to do, because it's easy to slip and miss some of those easy marks. Okay, question 2. Again, this is very typical in terms of its style, still using an extract from the Telltale Heart. From lines 13 to 19, give 2 ways the narrator's behaviour shows that he's confident he will not be caught. You can use your own words or quotation from the text. There's our extract. I've already marked it up ready for you. If you'd like to have a go at this question, pause the video and have a go at that just now. Okay, here's three different candidates again and their contributions for these, and it shows you what these candidates get and why. So we've got candidate A says, "I smiled for what I had I to fear and wild audacity of my perfect triumph." This candidate gives two quotations to answer the question, which is acceptable, 2 marks. Candidate B covered up the evidence by placing a chair on top of the corpse. He was confident, not insecure. Now, this answer only achieves 1 mark for that first point because the second isn't specific enough to achieve a mark. So it's only a 1 mark there for candidate B. Candidate C, he smiled and welcomed the gentleman into his home and he showed the men around and sat down with them. Again, this candidate has used their own words to answer the question, which is acceptable. The first answer could be credited as 2 points, smiled and welcomed. So candidate C gets 2 marks there. So see how you did against those sets of marks and comments. Paper 2, this is where we tackle obviously our non-fiction. Now questions 1 and 2 focus on text 1, questions 4 and 5 focus on text 2. So very typical in terms of styling, this question from lines 11 to 16 identify 2 items the writer tells his wife not to send until he asks for them. There are 2 marks. If you'd like to have a go at this question, pause the video, have a quick read of the section just there, making sure that you're looking at the correct sets of lines and see if you can jot down your answer just now. Here's an example answer. So the 2 answers, OXO and cigarettes, there are 2 correct answers and they get 2 marks. Okay, so mark yours against that, see how you did. Question 2. Give one example from lines 22 to 28 of how the writer uses language to show his feelings for his new wife. Now, bear in mind, this is 2 marks. There's a little extract there. Have a read of that and see if you can have a go at this question. Pause the video and have a try of that now. And here's an example of from the text. "Now, my little darling, you must be patient with me, won't you?" And how does the writer use language? The writer uses language to show affection. The affection bit has by using pet names and affectionate language. And here's the marker's comment and the mark. So they get 2 marks for this. This answer offers a relevant example from the text. 2 comments are then offered on how language is used, although only 1 is required. The how is essential for the second mark. So the candidate says that the language has an effect in terms of showing the feelings for his new wife. It's used to show the affection Bert has, and it also references the type of language used. So it says pet names and affectionate language. So have a look at yours in comparison to that. Bear in mind the examiner's comments there. Let's have a look at a question 4. So questions 4 and 5, remember, will be from the second non-fiction text. This is only a single mark. From lines 17 to 22, identify how cooking for 1.5 people has improved. So there are the lines there. Make sure that you're looking at the right section of lines. If you'd like to have a go at this question, pause the video now and do that. And here is a response. Cooking for 1.5 people used to be pointless. Now it's quick and delightful with minimal preparation and washing up. Here are the markers' comments. So this candidate has included various points that could be credited. The first being now it's quick and delightful. There's also a minimal preparation and washing up identified, which is not required to achieve the marks, already been achieved. It also does not necessary. It's also not necessary to show how cooking was before. For example, it used to be pointless, as the question asks for how it is improved. It does, however, add weight to the point. So be careful to do exactly as the question requires. Don't overwork it. And the final one, question 5. So, cheap processed ready meals and a lack of fruit and vegetables led to poor sleep patterns and a constantly hungry child. And for the first time in my life, my skin broke out in big angry spots. In this example from lines 5 to 7, how does the writer use language to show how eating processed food made her feel? So I've put that little extract in just there, and it really is just how the writer uses language to show how it made her feel. So have a go at that question. Pause the video now. And here's a response. So she uses language that directly expresses her feelings, such as big angry spots. Using the word angry shows her anger. So the candidate achieves the mark there by saying big angry spots and particularly references the use of the word angry, basic word level, and it's explained in a basic way. Using the word angry shows her anger. So make sure you comment on how the language is used. Don't describe what language is used. Okay, so there concludes our retrieval practice questions.